Hey guys, Coach here and welcome to this week's video. This week we are talking about a decision that homeowners generally have to make when renovating either through a landscape project with multiple elements or just renovating the lawn itself. It's what we're talking about here today, the age-old decision between seeding or sodding. That's what we got for you today. Let's get going, shall we? Hey, welcome back. Let's talk this one out just a bit, and maybe at the end of the video, you'll have just a little bit more information and maybe some more knowledge, pros and cons wise, on either side of the fence. Now, tell you straight up, I know what team I bat for, and that is what you're going to hear today. And I also know that I have been subjected to the other team, the seed team. And there's nothing wrong with it whatsoever. It's just that my experience is rooted, no pun intended, is rooted in the sod world. It really is. With the exception of my very first house in Hayward, California. Back then, I couldn't afford sod. And yet I had sold tens upon tens of thousands of square feet when I was in the nursery industry. But by the time I could afford my first house, yeah, it was kind of like, turn your pockets inside out type of thing, because I couldn't afford sod. So did it in seed, and it turned out okay. But as you will find out here today, there are some pluses and there are some minuses for seed. Let's talk about seed first. Hey, and before we go any further, remember August 20th, 2025. It's the last day that you can hit up and obtain at a drastic discount Homescape 2.0. The digital course that'll teach you everything you need to know about landscaping a residential yard. So, youryardcoach.com. So back in the day, I don't know how you guys were raised. I may be talking to some people that never have done anything seed-wise or been exposed to grass seed in any way. Maybe you guys have always been sod people, if you've been anything at all. But when I was growing up, it was always about seed. And Pops, he wasn't the greatest landscaper in the world, bless his heart, but when he did do the lawns, it was always in seed. And I can remember this small little lawn project that he did in the front yard. Little dinky thing. I would say it was probably 8 feet wide and 15 feet long, maybe 20 feet long. And I really didn't, I was a young lad of probably about 12 at the time. And I saw him do this. Now, he didn't rototill, he didn't prepare, he didn't use fertilizer. He basically jerked a bunch of tam junipers out of the ground, raked everything level, and put some seed down. No starter fertilizer. And I think I'm pretty sure he put a top dressing of some kind on it. And that was my exposure to a seed lawn. Needless to say, months and months later, this young lad had to mow it. So thanks, Pops, appreciated the extra chore. But I did learn quite a bit on how long things take and how much patience was needed before you could actually walk on it, before you could actually mow it, what you had to keep off of it. Now look at it from an aspect of something that you'd really like to have yesterday. And you do it in the seed fashion, and it is weeks and months before you truly have a viable lawn looking area. Grass seed is, for the most part, depending on your location, types of soil you have, the weather that goes on during germination, etc., how long it takes for it to germinate, get up to strength, fill in enough to where you can actually mow it, that first mowing, and pray tell that you do not have some gully washer of a storm, and that you're doing it at the time of year when germination is a viable option, that it's going to have a nice warm seed bed to germinate in, and you not get infested with birds and everything else that goes along with that. Then there's the keep the kids off it. Keep doggo off it. Because if you had a couple of medium-sized dogs and you let them out and they found a brand new seed bed to cut and run and pee and poop on, it's really going to throw a damper on the germination process. You also have the cost. The cost for decades was the easier way to go financially to get yourself a lawn. And pre-COVID, I would say, it was still probably 30 to 50% cheaper than doing it in sod. I do know that. After COVID, when everything seemed to skyrocket in the green industry, all of a sudden seed was, I'm telling you, by the time you rototill and prepare, grade, starter fertilizer, seed, top dressing, chances are some type of broadleaf weed control, which we'll talk about here in a second, and the time involved, man, the cost is really starting to level out, equal in some respects. Now, once you have germination, your grass seed isn't the only person coming to the germination party. You're also going to have whatever dormant and whatever active weed seed that is in the area. If you have prepared, say you've done a light rototilling or something, or you've brought in imported soil and you've just skim coated things, there are things in that seed bed that aren't just grass seed. And you've given them free license to go, woohoo, we can germinate too. And now you have grass seed, you have weedy grass, and you have broadleaf. And oftentimes you have that struggle of letting the grass grow and having to pull the weeds or spray the broadleaf weed if you have broadleaf weeds. It's a little bit of a pain and understandable. I know that there's one creator on YouTube, very popular channel. Many of you probably know which one I'm talking about. And they did a new seed lawn along the whole stretch of their front driveway. And I remember they had that as part of the content. And I watched it over the weeks. And as that grass grew up, holy cow, did they have a lot of broadleaf weed that came up with it. Now, spraying herbicide, broadleaf or non-selective or whatever, is not a key topic on YouTube. You'll have the environmentalists come out in like a mad hornet's nest going, I'm unsubscribing, you guys sprayed, you're poisoning the world. I understand. And you can go out and you can hand pick and do whatever you want to do. But if you have tens of thousands of square feet that you have seeded, kind of like what we have here in our lawn. You know, if you had a brand new seed bed, which is about 10,000 square feet here, and you had to go in and pick out all the weed that came up with the seed, you'd be pulling your hair out. You really would. Now, I'm sure that they probably off camera took care of it. How they took care of it is not my business. But I do notice now in the most recent shots that they've had that, yeah, a lot of the broadleaf weed is gone. So something took care of it, huh? But it's something that you have to remember. And like I said at the beginning, seed lawns can really put a teaching on how to develop patience. It really does. You're not talking a week. You're not talking 6 weeks. You're talking, depending on the time of year you're doing it, you could be talking 60, 90 to 120 days before you have a viable green space. And that's if you don't have any of these other contraindicated problems that crop up. That's if you have just the perfect 120 days. So let's review about seed. On average, it's still a little bit less. It's less than your average sod installation. It does require the same preparation, same grading and firming up, and then the application of the seed and top dressing. Don't seed it without top dressing it. You can use peat moss, compost, planting mix, straw, any number of things to cover up the seed. If you don't, it doesn't give it that germination bed with the moisture and heat and light that it needs for it to germinate and push through. And it's kind of like, if the birds can see it, the birds are going to eat it. And you can have quite a bit of problems. And if you're out there with chickens or something like that and they find it, yeah, well, it'll really mess up. And then you have the weather patterns. You know, a seed bed, germinated or not, if you get 2 inches of rain one day, you may have a flooded seed bed. And once you have that, oftentimes grass seed can be subjected to diseases like damping off and wilt and other stuff. So there's all the pros and cons for seed. Now, application of the seed can be done in a couple different ways. You can do the old whirlybird, which is kind of a raggedy way of doing it because it's not exact placement. You can do the old push drop spreader. Or if you have a couple extra bucks, you can look around in your area and see if there's somebody that does hydro seed. And hydro seed is a commercial application where they mix up a bunch of recycled paper product with water and grass seed and literally go out there and hose the area down. And the paper product turns out to be your top dressing, and it germinates that way. Much more time efficient way of putting down a huge lawn. One of the last jobs that I did, it was not for a lawn, but it was for a wildflower meadow. And I had 30 or 40,000 square feet. It was 3/4 of an acre of wildflower meadow that the customer wanted. And I remember hiring a local company to come out. I had already purchased all of the seed, which was about 30 pounds of seed. And it took them a whopping 1 hour to put it down. Now you can imagine if that was something that you did by hand and you had to top dress it by hand, that would be a multi-day job, and they did it in about an hour. So maybe you can look into that option as well. So when looking into the sod world, sod has been around for many, many years. There's documentation of Europeans and Japanese empire that used a form of sod for the more discerning clientele out there, that they cut it literally by knife or sword, and the rich people had sod cut and placed into their gardens. Modern day sod really didn't come into vogue for the average Jane and Joe until probably the 60s, I would say. It was available post WW2 after the rapid housing expansion, when all our fighting men and women came home, and boom, you know, residential areas sprang up all over the country. But there was still that cost factor. So when you're talking about sod, the biggest deal breaker for most is the cost of the sod. You're paying someone to have the property, the machinery, the seed, the people, the cutting devices, and man, are those things impressive to watch, and the shipping and pallets, etc. Plus marketing, advertising, everything that goes along with business. So recent research by moi found that it averages between 35 to 90 cents a square foot. A square foot. Now, when I was in the business and I was putting sod lawns in back at the beginning of this century, I would say retail was about 33 cents a square foot. And I was getting it for probably 18 to 21 cents a square foot. Nowadays, imagine doing that lawn in sod. Roughly 10,500 square feet. And you're paying, let's just say, let's go in the middle and say something like 60 cents a square foot. Do that math. And all of a sudden you're talking what? 7,200 bucks plus or minus for that? Yeah, big difference between seeding and sodding. So generally the cost is the biggest prohibitor of it. But that's for 10,000 square feet. Maybe you only have 500 square feet, maybe 1,000 square feet. And it's much more financially viable for you to go spend $400 to $600 on sod and have it delivered right to your driveway. The other drawback about sod is the workout. Sod is heavy. It is dirt, root, grass, and water. And let me tell you, there's nothing like getting a pallet of wet sod after a rainstorm or something, and they finally are able to get back out in the fields, cut it for you, palletize it, and ship it to you. And when you pick up one of those 10 square foot, 2 feet by 5 feet rolls, and you're picking up an 80-pound bag of cement worth of weight, and you do that dozens of times, most people, hey, they can handle it. They can handle it really well. Others, that's a lot of weight to lug around. And if your driveway is in the front yard, where most driveways are, and you have to wheelbarrow that up to the backyard, or a slight slope up to the backyard, big, big workout. Really good to have some young bucks or young buckettes be able to do that for you. And then you can lay it down and put it down in. So the two biggest drawbacks that I see is the cost and the workout. Now let's talk about the positives. Hands down for me, if I could do it up here and I was going to renovate that baby back there, it would be sod. There's nothing more tangible and gratifying than seeing instant grass. All your soil prep is about the same. You have soil amendment that's introduced, maybe you rototill down 3-4 inches or so, raking it out, firming it up, and leveling it out, and then rolling sod out onto it, and then water rolling the sod for good contact. And you look at it that night or at the end of the weekend, depending how much you're putting down, instant lawn. There's nothing that can beat that. You don't have the 30, 60, 90, 120 days you're waiting for that new seed lawn to come up. And if it's something that's important, like taking out old raggedy, weedy old lawn and putting down something because you're putting the house for sale, boom, there you are. So instant lawn is the biggest benefit from all of this. A side note, because you have put down the grass and root mat on there, you have also given the weed germination problem a real kick in the head. It's very, very hard for broadleaf weed and everything to penetrate up through a sod layer. As long as you have put the sod in correctly, you have budded the joints really well, you have seamed it with overlapping seams, kind of brick pattern type of installation. I have Maestro put in a little pictorial on how that is done. It has to be done. When I was doing it, in the beginning, I was putting in all my sod in any project that I had. As I got older and that's the words I want to use. As I got older and the workout did not enthuse me as much anymore, the companies that I bought the sod from also had installation services. And I just signed up for that immediately because I was able to do other things and supervise the installation and watch guys that I had maybe mulching beds and stuff. So my time management was much better spent. Yeah, I spent, $300 to $400 more on an installation package, and I didn't have a problem with it. Maybe the sod installers and growers in your area have the same thing. And it kind of takes that weight off your shoulders, so to speak. You can watch them put it down, you can make sure that everything is good, and do something else while the sod is going down. Now, once your sod is installed, it is a sponge of an area of your new landscape, your new turf area. It wants water, and it wants water bad. And I'm not talking about a little bit of water. You have to soak it. Soak it really, really good. And if you got temperatures high 70s, 80s, 90s, you're talking multiple times a day. And when I used to install sod lawns for folks and I gave them the walkthrough, I know that I always put the sod lawn zones on a total separate program from the drip irrigation or whatever else there was planning wise. It would come on at 6 a.m., it would come on at 2 p.m., and it would come on at 6 p.m. And it would come on for the amount of time I felt it was going to keep everything moist, coast to coast. And then I always counseled my clients on having a hose at the ready and to inspect in the morning before they go to work and when they come home from work and make sure that everything looked damp. And that was really on me as far as sprinkler installation too. I had to make sure there was perfect head-to-head or overhead overlapping coverage so that everything stayed really, really wet. Now there's still the thing about staying off of a new seed bed and a new sod bed. Now if you have to, yeah, you can walk on it. But if you are watering it 3 times a day, say 5 minutes per zone, you're going to have kind of a squishy area. And then as you taper that water off after the first 7 to 10 days, then it'll start to firm up a little bit and your roots will have already descended down into the new sod bed. And you can do that with a little tug test at the edges, tug test at the corners, tug test mid-roll, and you'll feel it. You'll feel it when those roots have started to descend down into the soil level. And then you know you're in the home stretch. But don't let the dogs go cutting and running. Do not let it be a play area for the kids. Not for 2 weeks, I would say. At the probably the outside edge is 2 weeks. You will find that within that 2 weeks, that sod will take root and start sprouting and sprout very, very fast. Your first mowing will generally be within that first 14 days. And I would cut it very, very tall to start with. Like if you have a 5-step mower, cut it at the 5th step and then gradually lower it down depending on the season that we're in when you install it. So when researching this video for you guys, I came across a very unique sod company here in the state of Maine. And I'll put its name right up here. But they have sod that has nothing to do with turf grass. They have native stuff. Muskeg moss, blueberry sod, fern sod. They have all kinds of different sod that I didn't even know existed until I started doing some research on it. And hey, I guess it's a thing. I've got plenty of area down here in the forest where you could take sod, I guess, if you wanted to dig it out and use it for some kind of native type of environment. But for the 99% of us, it's going to be turf grasses. And you're going to have the cool season grasses with your blues, your ryes, and your fescues. And you'll have your warm season grasses with your Bermudas, your zoysia, your bahia, your centipede grasses. And they come in various forms in sod. They're usually always palletized, mostly Midwest to West, I would say, that I have seen is rolls stacked on a pallet. And then when you get kind of down south and you have more of the warm season grasses, I notice that they're more squares or rectangles that are stacked on pallets. It's a different way of doing it. One of the things about sod installation, sharp knife, sharp knife, sharp knife to cut with. Do not cut with a dull knife. You will kill your wrists and your hands. Make sure that you have it. The installers that I used to use, they were masters at having 2 sod knives, 1 on each hip, and they had a whetstone in their back pocket. And as soon as their knife didn't just glide through that sod, out it came, spit on the stone, and they would just put an edge back on that in 15 seconds and go right back to work. Look for sod knives. You can find them at the jungle store, you can find them at sod companies, etc. So landscape companies as well. Sometimes you can use a linoleum knife, but kind of hard to keep that thing sharp enough to really do a good job. You can use a kitchen butcher knife and keep it nice and sharp. It'll work. It's not the best, but it'll work. And remember when you're putting your sod in, make sure those seams are nice and tight and learn how to bevel an end. It'll come in and the rolled up end will be kind of curled. If you unfurl that curl just a little bit and take about an inch off on a bevel and drag it up to the next sod, you'll see that seam literally disappear. Little trick that I learned from those installers. So, seed lawn, sod lawn. I'm curious where you stand on the great debate, and if you have anything going on with the remainder of this year. Here we are, August of 2025. For us, we have gone from the 90s to the 80s to the 70s, and now I think maybe we can say goodbye to the 90s and 80s. We are now going off into the cool part of our year, and I have one lawn project left. I'm going to overseed that, and probably not the way you normally overseed it. I just have some leftover seed, and I'm going to put it down and hope for the best. Hopefully it'll come up the rest of this month and into September, and we'll be done. Maybe it'll thicken up some of those bare spots out there. So if you have any questions regarding this video or any other landscape issue, drop it in the comments below for me, or you can always email me, youryardcoach@gmail.com. Anyway, thanks for sticking with me. If you're here this long, I appreciate your attention, and please visit the website, youryardcoach.com. Remember, Homescape 2.0 on sale only for a couple more days. And if you have any other types of landscape needs, they're over there on the website as well. I'll see you guys next week. As always, to your landscape success, and bye for now.